Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Where I don't think the coaching carousel is done spinning in the SEC. We know that LSU is open. We know that Florida is open. We know that Arkansas is open. And I'll be honest. First of all, I just think this week Kentucky plays at Auburn. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that for both coaches, this game is absolutely must win. For both coaches, a loss here, I think, unofficially ends their tenure at their school. And certainly I don't think it necessarily means it's going to happen the day after the game. I think Mark Stoops might get until the end of the season, Hugh Freeze, whatever. But I just bring it up to say it is a very interesting game with two coaches whose positions are very precarious. And in the case of this show, we are going to talk Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats. Okay, so Kentucky, it's bad. We all know it's bad. And the one thing that I would say about Kentucky is this, is I actually think it's actually much worse than most people on the outside realize. Kentucky fans, this is no disrespect, okay? But I think there's this perception of, the team historically has not been great. So if you're sitting there, you look at the win-loss record and they're 3-4, they're 3-5. Well, how bad could it really be? Oh, no. It is really toxic. Okay. So we've talked about Kentucky, I think probably more than any national show. And there's obvious reasons why. We have a lot of listeners in Kentucky, whatever. By the way, make sure you're following our Torres on UK page for all of your late breaking Kentucky news. But we've talked a lot about Kentucky because to me, it's a fascinating situation where for years, all we heard was, Mark Stoops has the best job in America. It's like, no, that isn't one. It's insulting to Mark Stoops. All this, all he has to do is go 6-6. It's insulting to what he and his staff built, but it's also insulting to Kentucky fans because Kentucky fans show up, they show out, they support this team, and they are not getting the results that they deserve. Kentucky fans, to their credit, I don't want to speak for everybody. I don't think most people expect national championships, but what I do think is when Indiana's in the top 10 and Vandy, I don't know if they're in the top 10, but they're, top 15 and in position to make a playoff, there's no reason that Kentucky can't be the same. Well, I bring it up because it is just bad at Kentucky, okay? So like I said, we've talked about it probably more than most shows, but Kentucky right now, coming out of last week, they're 3-4. They have 5 games left. And I think Tennessee was kind of a turning point moment. I'm not saying that anybody expected Kentucky to beat Tennessee, but it was bad. It was really embarrassing. And as a matter of fact, like Matt, you could pop up that stat that I gave you. You want to know how bad things are at Kentucky? Credit to Wildcats' tongue for putting this out on Twitter. I saw it Monday night while I was up watching baseball until 7 a.m. in the morning, 18 innings. This is a wild stat. SEC wins at Kroger Field. That is Kentucky's home field. SEC wins at Kroger Field since November 1st of 2021. Who has the most SEC wins on Kentucky's home field since November 1st, 2021? Tennessee with 3. Kentucky has just 2. Vandy has 2. South Carolina has 2. And Georgia has 2 as well. By the way, that is bad. That is embarrassing. And I think what's especially embarrassing, and I think it's actually a pretty good metaphor for the Mark Stoops era, is that when Mark Stoops had it rolling, Vandy and South Carolina were just 2 guarantees on the schedule. And so the fact that you've now lost to both of those teams back-to-back times at home, and again, the stats are just totally jarring, right? Like I said, they're 0-4, 0-5 in the SEC right now. They are on top of that. They went 1-7 last year. So what is that? 1-12 in the SEC since the start of last year. I've given the stat. They have not won an SEC home game since October. I think it was September 30th of 2021. That was against Florida with Billy Napier, who has since been fired. So it's really bad. So the question becomes, what happens now? And I will say this. I'll give myself a little bit of credit here because I've been on top of this, I think, longer than most. I think there was this belief, and I know we're going to get it in the chat or in the comment section of, you can't fire him. The buyout's too big. And I said, listen, one, I think we've learned in this era of college football No buyout is too big, and most of them are structured in a way that the school is generally not going to pay the entire buyout, right? LSU's I thought was really interesting. Brian Kelly has no upfront money owed. He's just owed $800,000 every month until they pay out the contract, and it's mitigated if he gets another job. So if he was making $10 million a year at LSU and he makes $5 million a year at his next job, if he decides to coach again, then that's not money LSU has to pay. Mark Stoops' contract is a little bit different. He is owed a ton of money up front. And I think most people felt like there is no way he is going to give up any dollar amount and we're screwed. We're stuck with him, whatever. And what I said was, one, there's always a way with buyouts. But two, I think if you're Mark Stoops, I don't know why you want to show up to work every day where you are absolutely hated and do it for another year or two just because the school doesn't want to pay you or can't afford to pay you. So I've been adamant that I think this is the end of the road for Mark Stoops, that at some point he would realize it's not worth it. Let's get to a negotiated buyout. And it feels like the buzz behind the scenes is starting to get there as well. Look, there's a lot of reporting going on. We talk about being behind a paywall. We don't disrespect all the guys and girls that work hard to get good content. But I know my guy Justin Rowland is all over it. I know some of the people at the Lexington Herald Leader are all over it. But I also did hear an interesting comment from my old buddy, Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio. So I think most people know. I know Matt Jones used to do stuff for KSR, the blog, the website. But Matt Jones and his crew, Drew Franklin, my guy, Ryan Lemon, my guy, they were talking about the situation, and specifically after Tennessee, where Tennessee walks in, they beat your brains in, and it was kind of crazy because it happened at the same time as LSU A&M, where A&M fans took over Baton Rouge and Tennessee fans took over Lexington. But Matt Jones, Drew Franklin, Ryan Lemon talking about the state of Kentucky football and why this thing may actually be coming to an end.
Here's where we are for the future. I know this there's rarely I say certainty, I'll say some certainty. I'd say we're now at 85 to 90% chance we'll have a new coach next year. I think more important than the specifics of the game was kind of how it played out. Specifically, and part of this was because it was raining, and part of this was because it was at night. But the fourth quarter was empty.
Yeah.
You were there. How empty are we talking?
Very empty. Actually, someone sent me a good picture yesterday. It's just unbelievable how the only people there are wearing orange.
The only way it could be different is if, in my opinion, if they were to win if they were to go 6-6, which would mean beating Auburn, Florida, and then either Vandy or Louisville, right? Does anyone on this show disagree with that?
No. If any 6-6.
Do you now think 5-7 also means a change? Because I do.
I do.
I guess I'd have to see who they beat to get those 5 wins.
I don't think the games left on the schedule are that impressive outside of Vandy.
I think the administration has said, let's wait a week and let's see what happens at Auburn. Not that Auburn could save his job, but Auburn could be the final nail, Ryan. That's how I look at it. Do you agree?
Yeah, they go on the road, they get embarrassed, don't play well. I think that would maybe be the final nail in the coffin.
And at which point, then I think they would be completely open to having the discussion of, all right, how do we end this? And starting to have that discussion with Stoops' people. Still, I think the people believe around the program, there's still a way to win 6 games. Now, we can all think that's ridiculous, but when you're in that locker room and you're playing, you can't think it's over.
No.
You still got 5 games to play. And I think they look at it and say, is it insane that we could beat Auburn, Florida, and one of Vandy and Louisville? Well, I mean, I guess it's not insane, right?
It's got a small percentage chance you could pull that off, I guess.
Matt Jones, I thought he did an awesome job laying that out there, and I'll piggyback a little bit off of what he said. First of all, I was wrong on the stat. I knew they had played 7 games because they're one of the few teams that has already had both of their byes. For some reason, I thought they were 3-4. They're 2-5, 0-5 in the SEC. And so what Matt said is basically, I think, exactly right. Is that he did the interview with Andy Staples and Ari Wasserman a few weeks ago where he said 3-9 is not good enough, 4-8 is not good enough, 5-7 maybe you can talk yourself into it, and 6-6 he's good. And I think he even changed that opinion of we got to get to 6-6 if we're having a serious conversation. Couple things. The issue with getting to 6-6 is pretty straightforward. I just don't see the scenario where this team goes 4-1 down the stretch. They're coming off. Listen, I think what's interesting about the state of Kentucky is a few things. One, they easily could have beat Texas. So if we're going to criticize Mark Stoops for everything, we have to acknowledge that they should have beaten Texas. And I think what's kind of interesting about Kentucky specifically is that they finally figured out the quarterback. Cutter Boley is awesome. The issue is the defense. All of a sudden, the defense can't stop anybody. By the way, I did have the over in that game. I think Tennessee hit the over by itself. But I just bring it up because what gives you confidence that, like, I think Matt's right. Yeah, if you go 5-1 from here and you or 4-1 from here and you finish at 6-6 overall, then yeah, you deserve to keep your job because you're going to have the wins needed for someone to feel like there is actually momentum going into next year. The issue is I just don't see the wins. Now, listen, Auburn this week, Auburn's struggling. Auburn is not playing well, but I do think there is a glimmer of hope. And I do think the point that Matt brought up was a good point. I'm kind of the belief, like if Auburn loses to Kentucky this weekend, I think there's a chance Hugh Freeze is out. Sunday, we're doing an emergency reaction show Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I don't think that's the case for Mark Stoops. I think there's too much built-in equity with Mitch Barnhart where they'll at least give him the self-respect to finish the season. But at the same time, if you're 2-5 right now, you have 0 SEC wins, and outside of the Texas game, it wasn't even competitive. Where do we feel confident that these wins are going to come? And by the way, I think Matt laid it out perfectly. Like, Auburn is winnable. I don't think they're going to win it. They're a 10-point underdog according to Circa. But Auburn, I think, sort of maybe found their quarterback with Ashton Daniels last week. If you didn't watch the game, Jackson Arnold gets benched. The defense is incredible as always. And the Ashton Daniels kid, the backup, played really well. Even if you beat Auburn, you still got Florida. Okay, even if you beat Florida, you got Tennessee Tech. And then you close with 2 really good teams. Now, to Matt's point, if you beat Vandy, if you beat Louisville, then all of a sudden there's actual momentum. The issue is we have seen no reason to believe that this team can beat Vandy or Louisville, especially on the road. And I'll take it a step further. I haven't seen enough to make me believe that they'll beat Auburn this weekend, even though Auburn is struggling. And so I just bring it up. It's a fascinating set of circumstances. And I'll stick to what I have said since like week 3. I remember week 3, week 2, whenever Kentucky played Ole Miss, I remember talking about this on this show. I said, I believe in my heart of hearts that it's over for Mark Stoops. And by the end of the year, we will get to a point where he's ready to negotiate a buyout. And I know what Kentucky fans said. He's not going to give back a single dollar. What I just come back to is a couple things. Is one, listen, I don't know all the guy's financial situation, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this. I do know that he went through a very public divorce, so I understand that, probably had to write a big check when that happened. The guy is not broke, okay? And the guy is not whatever. And so I just don't think that you are going to force the school to pay you every dollar as the contract stipulates, with 2 reasons why. One is, do you want to show up every day to a place where everybody hates you? And to be clear, I'm not criticizing Kentucky fans for being frustrated with Mark Stoops. It's been 3 or 4 years of an absolute downturn, no reason for hope. We talked about it a few weeks ago. Like, the recruiting rankings are in the tank. They're going to have to go back into the portal. Like, it's kind of a train wreck, if we're being perfectly honest, even behind the scenes. So there's no reason for hope. Are you going to show up to a job where nobody wants you there? He looks so defeated in these press conferences every week. Nobody's working harder to get this thing figured out. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't think he's really working that hard to figure it out. I think he knows that he's in a no-win situation. The other reason that I think he has to consider a negotiated buyout, I understand you want every dollar that's owed to you, but do you want to tarnish your legacy where you will one day get a statue if you just keep your mouth shut and take a little bit less money? Like, this isn't Brian Kelly at LSU. Everybody at LSU hates Brian Kelly. It will go down as one of the least happy times of most LSU fans' lifetime was watching Brian Kelly coach football. We got a lot of Kentucky fans in the chat. I'll let you guys and girls tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think Kentucky fans will hate Mark Stoops if he does the right thing and announces a separation after this year. Where I do think Kentucky fans would hate him and where I do think his legacy would get hurt is if he decides, I'm not leaving until I get every penny. And if you can't afford to pay me, well, guess what? You're bringing me back for 2026. Then you're talking about a situation where you either stayed when you're not wanted or, bankrupt is a little bit of an exaggerated term, but you're basically going to bankrupt the athletic department. For people who don't know, Mark Stoops is owed essentially his entire buyout within 60 days. Again, this is not a Brian Kelly, you pay it out over 6, 7, 8 years. This is like you pay it out over 6, 7, 8 weeks, And we know that no school, especially a school like Kentucky, is going to be able to do that. And so I just bring it up because I don't know what Mark Stoops is going to do, but two things feel very clear to me. I don't think enough is going to happen for him to keep the job. Listen, maybe you steal a game against either Vandy or Louisville, but even if you do, are we working under the assumption that you're going to Auburn on the road at night and getting a win against maybe the best defense in the SEC? I don't know that I could work under that assumption. Are you working under the assumption that I know Florida has struggled? They have an interim head coach and they lost the last time that they came to Kroger Field. But are we working under the assumption that you're beating Florida? Because that's the whole thing. Even if you get either the win against Vandy or the win against Louisville, you have to still beat Florida and Auburn to even put yourself in position where the Vandy game and Louisville games matter. So I don't think it's going to happen, and we'll see what happens with Mark Stoops. I'm fascinated because to me, I think he has a very clear decision to make. He has to come up, and it's funny. I was talking to somebody who knows him a little bit on, I guess it would have been Monday after the Tennessee loss. And I said to him, listen, I'm not advising him, but you can give him my number, tell him to call me. Because I said, look, bottom line is this, is if I was advising him, this is what I would tell Mark Stoops. I would tell him straight up. I'd say, pick a number, whatever the number is. I think he's owed $38 million, $15 million, $20 million, and figure out a number that isn't the full buyout and doesn't make the school pay it within 60 days and renegotiate that thing. Because if you want to have any credibility in that state, if you want to go down as beloved rather than hated, you cannot accept every dollar of that buyout, right? And so to me, it's like he has two paths. He can fight for every dollar and be hated for the rest of his life in a place that he should be loved. Or he can come up with a number. He can renegotiate the buyout so he doesn't bankrupt the athletic department. And then from there, guess what? You're going to get a statue. Whatever businesses you want to operate in the state of Kentucky, you're going to be able to do that. I know he has some bourbon, whatever. I don't know if he owns a company or a distillery or a restaurant or whatever. You're going to be a legend in Kentucky if you just step away. But what you can't do is take every dollar, try to force the school to pay you every dollar, and force the school to do it on the terms of the contract. Because if you do, you're going to ruin your legacy. So we'll see what happens. I stand by what I said. I think Mark Stoops, I don't, to his credit, I don't think he'll be fired before the end of the season. I think Mitch Barnhart will give him the benefit of the doubt. But in my opinion, I think at the end of the season, what he should do, hold a press conference. Listen, we set a standard at this place that's never been met in this era. I'm proud of what we built, but it's time to hand it over to somebody else. Then guess what? You walk out with your dignity, you get your statue, and oh, by the way, you also get, to live your life. You get to enjoy your money, and you get to stay being a legend in Kentucky, which is what he should be and what his legacy should be as well. I'm going to be coming to the state of Kentucky soon, and that is because they have the hottest new sports book out east. It is the new Circa sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so I've told you all about Circa. They are official hotel and casino partners of the Aaron Torres pod. And when I'm in Vegas, and I'll be there next week for Florida, Arizona, BYU, Villanova, when I'm in Vegas, there is no place I love hanging out more than Circa. But here's the crazy part. I know all of you can't get to Vegas. Well, guess what? When you are back east, in Kentucky, in Tennessee, right around that region, guess what? Circa has opened up a brand new sports book at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. This is right on the Kentucky-Tennessee border, not far from Nashville, about 30, 35 minutes from Nashville. And this is the best place to watch games, right? Maybe you're a Kentucky fan and you want to watch anything but Kentucky football on Saturday. Maybe you're a Vol fan and you can't get into Neyland Stadium this weekend against Oklahoma, so you need a place to watch the game. What you got to do, go to Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky, and the Circa Sportsbook there. All the hospitality. This is a replica sportsbook to the world's largest sportsbook in Las Vegas. And oh, by the way, you know what the great part about Circa is? I'm going to be there soon doing live shows. So if you want to meet Torres in person, we'll try to set something up. I can't promise everything. I don't know what Circa has in mind, but check it out. Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. I will be down there during college hoop season at some point, and we very much appreciate Circa's support. Speaking of Kentucky, not only is the beautiful Circa Sportsbook there, but so are the Kentucky Wildcats. We were just talking Mark Pope and his future. And so let's go ahead and get to a couple just comments about the state of Kentucky with Mark Stoops before we switch gears to basketball. Kentucky Outdoors Life. I've told fans last year and this year to stop going to games until he's gone. Enough is enough with Mark, and it's time to go. I think that's the tough part. Kentucky fans, listen, I think it's one of the most loyal football fan bases in college football. Forget basketball. We all know about basketball. But like, I go back to, I still vividly remember that Ole Miss game in week 2, week 3, whatever it was, where Ole Miss walks into town and that place, I believe it was a stripe out. It was part blue, part white, but every single seat was filled. And it was like, Ole Miss had their little section, but it was all Kentucky fans. And they showed up ready to go, trying to will their team to victory. And it was just like, the team didn't show up. Well, the team actually played well that game. It was Mark Stoops that butchered the timeouts, butchered the clock at the end of the half, whatever. Kentucky fans are amazing, and they have shown so much support to that team. And I just, I don't know what else there is. I don't want to pile on Mark Stoops, but I feel bad for the fans. They deserve better. That program is in a rut. And I think the thing is, too, I think with all these other SEC teams, even the ones that are struggling, they've either fired their coach or there's reason for hope and excitement, right? Vandy might not make the playoff, but they clearly have the right coach. Tennessee might not make the playoff, but they clearly have the right coach. South Carolina, I know it's a struggle, but they won 9 games a year ago. Kentucky, it's been a 3 or 4 year downward trend. Kentucky Outdoors Life says just stop showing up to games. I give Kentucky fans credit for continuing to show up because I know for darn certain that I would not if that was my team. One or two other more. We'll talk some hoops. Luke says Cutter Boley angle is interesting. If he is gone, is he gone if you fire Stoops? I realize you can't make a decision based on that, but it can't be overlooked. I think what makes it unique, it was funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's from Kentucky, who's a UK fan on Monday. We did a little deep dive on Cutter Boley. By the way, from the same hometown as Abraham Lincoln. I know Kentucky fans knew that. Torres did not know that. Abraham Lincoln's birthplace is where Cutter Boley is from. I think it's different because he's a Kentucky guy. Like I know DJ Lagway has said all of the right things about being a Florida Gator, but I think if Florida butchers this coaching search, DJ Lagway is going to look at options, because he's not from Florida. He has no affiliation there, where I think Cutter Boley is more likely to stay. Now, I think, couple things here. One, you could hire a coach that he just doesn't like. I think there's a possibility, though not likely, that you hire a coach that's bringing a quarterback with him. I'll give you a little inside baseball right now. I don't think it applies to Kentucky specifically, but Brian Hartline is the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I don't know if this is supposed to get out there, but I have been told that he is basically shopping himself as a package deal of like, I'm going to bring some guys from Ohio State with me if you hire me, including a high-profile quarterback, whatever. And so, there's a possibility that the new guy just brings his own quarterback. I mean, I haven't thought that much about it. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator at Oregon, does he know that there's a backup quarterback if Dante Moore that doesn't go pro this year that would want to enter the transfer portal? I believe Austin Novostad is the backup there. So I think there's a lot of variables. My hunch would be Cutter Boley would wait to see who the next head coach is. I think the head coach would be crazy to run him off unless he was certain that he wasn't the guy, because I think Cutter Boley is going to try to be loyal if the new coach is loyal to him. Is that the best decision for him? That's kind of up to him, but I think he's going to be loyal if at all possible. For people who don't know, Cutter Boley is the starting quarterback at Kentucky. He's actually been awesome. Totally outplayed Arch Manning a few weeks ago, was great against Tennessee a few days ago. Unfortunately, as I said a minute ago, the Kentucky defense is letting them down. One more question if we have one, Matt, then we will talk some college hoops. Let's get to this. Dead Messenger says, Kentucky was hoping A&M took him and still hoping somebody else will take him. Glad the A&M fan base had a you-know-what fit over it. Gig 'em. So Dead Messenger is apparently an A&M fan. I said this on the Sunday show. I said the real MVPs of Texas A&M season, it's not Mike Elko, it's not Marcel Reed, it's Texas A&M fans that basically just said, no, we're not letting you hire Mark Stoops, and we are going to revolt, and we will not give money, and we will not show up if Mark Stoops is the next head coach. I don't think it'll ever get made. That would be a great, short documentary, hour-long documentary, whatever. David Nuno at Texags, my man. Let's start working on that one, because that would be that is a great, especially if Elko makes the playoff this year and then continues to have success into the future. That becomes one of the great hypothetical what ifs ever of Texas A&M basically going, no disrespect, Kentucky fans, but it's the truth, going right back into that cycle of overpaid, older coach, doesn't want to recruit, Jimbo wanted to recruit, so that's probably not fair. But Jimbo was clearly past his prime. Blueprint that didn't work. Mark Stoops is the same. And credit Texas A&M fans because, if they don't throw a fit the way they did, maybe Mark Stoops is the head coach there. And maybe it's as bad at Texas A&M as it feels like it is at Kentucky right now.